Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 117.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the CashFlow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other CashFlow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
Okay, sports fans, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I am your host, Jay Massey. Glad that you are here. You know what? As we get closer and closer to the almighty Turkey Day, we have to be grateful for many things. And one of the things that I think we can learn to be grateful for is where we come from and how we got started. And most importantly, I've heard it said that occasionally the younger you are, the harder it is to be grateful. But I think today's guest is absolutely going to trump that particular mindset because he's been able to do some amazing things. And what's important is the mindset that he did it with. Today's guest, Austin Netzley, is a former athlete turned engineer, investor, entrepreneur, and soon to be author. In fact, if you are hearing my voice right now, you may have already gotten a copy of his latest book, and we'll definitely have him talk about it. He's the founder of One Pursuit Investments, as well as the host of the Yo Pro Wealth podcast. And for those of you who are like, Yo Pro, what's that? It's young professional. I know. First time I heard it, I didn't know what it was either. But he overcame $80,000 of debt and a middle-class mindset. And I'm telling you, that's the key right there to find financial freedom within a few years. And hear me clearly, at the age of 27, retired from corporate America to travel the world and scale his stock trading business while also doing what he's most passionate about: helping others take their money and their mindset to the next level. You notice how that had nothing to do with working for someone else? Let's meet the man himself, Mr. Austin Netzley. How you doing, sir?
I am doing excellent, Jay. I am so grateful. You said the word grateful. I'm so grateful to be here. It's really an honor.
Right. I mean, it's that time of year, but at the same time, I'm guessing when you talk about overcoming that middle class mindset, gratitude has to play a part in that.
Oh, absolutely. And that's actually one of the key lessons, and we'll talk about it later, but that's one of the key lessons that I learned from interviewing 75 successful people like you. Like, it's amazing that the power that gratitude in and of itself has. And one guy I talked to, Dennis Cummins, he wrote the book, Turning Terrible into Terrific. Basically, the way to turn any bad situation around, and bad doesn't even have to be that bad. It can be something mediocre, which is bad in our opinion, right? The way to turn that around is with gratitude. You start to build that momentum by just getting things in motion, starting with what you do have, right? And then as soon as you start to build momentum, you're unstoppable. But that's a definite huge piece of the mindset and of success, I think. So yeah, great time of year.
Excellent. Excellent. Now, before we get too far into it, first of all, I just want to say, remember, guys, bad is a matter of perspective. But the other thing that I want to say is, we got to find out a little bit more because, you know, nobody that I'm aware of is just born popping out perfect. Okay. And we go through a journey. You mentioned, you know, that you athlete, engineer, investor, entrepreneur, all these things. I guess my question is when I look at today's entrepreneurs, kind of like yesterday's superheroes. You know, you got the Arrow and Superman and Batman and Robin and all these people that were flying around in capes and tights, doing amazing things, saving people out of their own mess in most cases, and getting rewards for doing so. Mm-hmm. And before they put on those costumes, they each had an alter ego, secret identity, or somehow they started their journey differently than what we perceive them to be today. So we must now know, before you were all of those things and now a published author, I'd love to know, who is Austin Netzley?
Man, that's so true. But things have changed really, really quickly. So 6 years ago now, I graduated college with a lot of debt. And I was headed down the exact path that we were all supposed to do. I was working my butt off in school, getting good grades, staying out of trouble for the most part, doing everything right, got a dream job in the corporate world. And I was stressed. I was in debt. I was poor. I was literally poor. I mean, I had $100 in my bank account, $80,000 worth of debt over my head, and I felt strangled. And over the next few years, I started to learn that there were other opportunities for me outside the corporate world. I started to read, started to change my mindset, and most importantly, then I started to get into action, and things just really snowballed from there.
You know, what's interesting is that there's probably someone going, hey, I went to school, I got good grades, but where was my reward as well? And what I find interesting, or at least that's what I've heard many times, is that oftentimes it's not what happens to us, but how we perceive or react to what is happening that begins to change the result. So walk us through this process here. I mean, many people end up in tens of thousands of dollars in debt, especially if they get one of those fancy things called a degree, which some of us call a receipt. How did you manage to flip that around? What was the point that says, okay, I don't like this and I'm going to do something about it? Because many people say, I don't like it, but you said, I'm going to do something about it.
Well, see, at first I didn't want to do anything about it. I was okay.
Interesting.
So I thought it had to be work, right? It wasn't supposed to be fun. It was like I saw my parents not necessarily really enjoy their jobs. I saw them go work for somebody else. It's the only thing I knew. And I was doing that at the highest level. So my first year in the corporate world, I had made six figures with my bonus and investments and different things. So I thought I was being successful, but then the big trigger for me is I went into a sales role. It was my third job for the company, and I had this vision in my head anyhow. So I wanted an engineering degree. I wanted some sales experience with that, and I was going to get my MBA. And that was going to be my perfect equation that was going to take me to be a CEO of a large company. And that's, again, the only thing I knew. So in my third job, which was that sales role, which was getting ready to check off the box, I wanted to hit the ground running. So I always had a lot of motivation. I was like, I'm an engineer, but damn it, I'm going to be number one in sales in the country. I'm ready to hit the ground running. I didn't even unpack my bags, and I was kind of chomping at the bit. And my boss really slowed me down, and he wanted me to transition over a period of 2 months. I thought it was going to take 2 hours, maybe 2 days max. He wanted it to be over 2 months. So anyhow, after a while, he finally relented and gave me an assignment. And that assignment was to read 3 books on the beach. And at first I was kind of ticked off, like I was ready to sell, right? And then I realized, wait, this is the best first job that anybody in the world could ever have. Like, what am I doing? So I went and read the books. Before then, I hadn't ever read really, at least choosingly, read any books in my life. So I read the books and right away I was hooked. And these books weren't about business. They weren't about money. But what I did learn was a lot about people and a lot about how much I could actually learn from books. And then I was on the road a lot, and those 3 books turned into 100 books over the next year. And that's a little bit overkill, but it wasn't, because my mindset was so down the path of a middle-class mindset that I talk about, that it needed that. That's what I really needed to get over that hump. So with each chapter, with each book that I read, with each lesson that I learned, I was slowly changing my mindset. And I didn't really understand that at the time, but what I did was learn what was possible, learn what other people were doing, and learn what success really is. And it didn't necessarily involve working for someone else. It involved freedom. And that's what I talk about in the book, is freedom is the ultimate measure of wealth.
Got it. Now, before we start talking about your book, I think we want to know what 3 books those were.
Yeah, so it's I hope I remember them all. So one was The Stone Fox, which many people read in 3rd grade or 2nd grade. So it wasn't a real high-level book. The other one was The Book Thief, which
didn't that become a movie?
I think it probably did, because it was a really, really well-written book. It's very interesting. Again, another fiction book. And then the 3rd book was The Art of Racing in the Rain. And this is a great story about a dog telling his family's story from the dog's perspective. So none of these books had anything to do with sales, but they had everything to do with sales. They had everything to do with people, how to treat people, how to read and relate to people. And again, it wasn't the books. It was more about the message and the power of reading that really changed my life.
Interesting. So from those 3 books, you said, I need 100 more. That's awesome.
Well, I was a cheapskate, so I went to the library and I got every single book they could have. And I was on the road a lot, and I started listening to podcasts. Started just every single second I was in the car, I was listening to a tape. Every single night before I went to bed, I was reading, and it was just like an addiction because I wanted more. I wanted more. I wanted to learn what was possible. And unfortunately, I wasn't taking action then. That was kind of phase two. But at first, I was just consuming as much as I could.
Okay, so let's talk about it then, because I think there are a number of individuals. We all go through various different phases as we learn to move, as I say, at the speed of instruction. What was it that took you from the data collection to, okay, it's time to go put some of this stuff to work?
When I started to read a few books that many people had suggested, and I didn't learn anything from them, I was like, okay, I know enough. Like, it's time to put this into action. So that was my big trigger, right? And I wanted more money every single day that went by, and it's still every single day. Now it's, anyhow, we'll talk about that later. Every single day that went by, I was thinking, how do I make more money? How do I make more money? I am not making enough money. And compared to everybody else around me, I was making a lot of money. Most of my friends were making 30-something thousand. I was in six figures already, and it wasn't enough. So I started to get into stock trading. And man, that was one heck of a game. And I loved it because it was the intellectual challenge that I was missing. Sales is not necessarily about an intellectual challenge, it's about other challenges. So I needed something for that piece of my brain, and I wanted more money. And it was the perfect combination of those things. And it was a challenge, it was rewarding and risky and all these different things that were new for me that was a lot of fun, but also down the line, very, very rewarding.
Excellent. Now, I think one of the most important things that would be helpful to many people is how did you know? How does someone tell? How can I tell? How can the person listen to us find out that they know enough? Because that was key.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing that I did that kind of coincided with all this is I started to join all these different networks. And that was extremely, extremely impactful because you learn a lot more from direct relationships than you do from just a one-way feed of information, right?
Right. More is caught than taught. Yes.
Right. Exactly. So what I did was I went to meetup.com and I started to join some local investing groups. And just by carrying on conversations with other people, I learned that I started to know a lot more than they did. And it was really about being able to compare myself to somebody else, that I could get a reflection of where I sat, right? So that's kind of the big thing that gave me the confidence to say, hey, I really do know something here. Like, I put in all this work, and then I could start to catch my failures. So once I started to get into action, I could see what was wrong and understand why it was wrong. And when I knew that, I was like, all right, at least I know the things that I'm doing wrong. Now I can fix them, and because you can't fix what you don't know, right? So that's a huge, huge piece. And awareness is just absolutely priceless in anything that you do. So once I was able to do that, I think that's a good measure, is if you can catch your failures and be realistic about what is working and what is not. And then also if you want to measure yourself versus your peers. And then what I did was I would join one group and I would talk to every single person I could, ask every single question I could. And kind of selfishly, once I learned enough or thought that I knew more than pretty much everybody in the group, I would move on to a new group online or a new group somewhere else. And I was just kind of pulling myself up group by group by group by group and building this network of knowledge and network of people that were just really going to be valuable for me.
Now, and then what I find very interesting about this is that you were very strategic, and that's good. And then you said something that I think many people may have missed. One of the key factors that I often run into, especially with new investors, new business individuals, what have you, is that you said you knew enough, not everything. Mm-hmm. You said the word enough. How did you free yourself from the trap of, well, what if this happens and what if that happens and how did you get the courage to go, you know what? I know enough. And even though it may not go perfectly, now is still the time to move forward.
To be honest with you, I'm not the person to answer that question because it took me a long time. I should have known enough in a month or less, and it took me probably 5 months before I would take action. And every single day, I was just fighting fear and trying to build my own confidence.
Wow.
And it's funny, the way that I started to build my confidence wasn't through knowledge or anything. It was through taking a cold shower.
Okay.
And
You're going to have to continue with that one before people
exactly.
start wondering.
So I don't know if it was Tim Ferriss or somebody that I learned, probably in a book, right? I learned that the way to start fighting fear is, so basically we have this lizard brain that I call it in our head that stops us from doing anything. It's created millions of years ago to stop us from going and being eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, right?
Right. But I haven't seen one of those in a while.
Yeah, they haven't been around a while, but we still got this lizard brain. So what we have to do is defeat this lizard brain. And the way for me to start doing that was to take a cold shower. And you know how it feels. It stings. It's not fun. You can't breathe. You're like, I got hot water right here. Why would I even do it?
It's why I don't go camping, but go ahead.
Right. So I did it. And the first day it stung, it sucked. And I got done with it. I was like, oh, I survived, right? That wasn't too bad. And then I did it again, and I did it again, and I did it again. And before I knew it, I was actually looking forward to that cold shower. And this was after a period of 2 weeks. And then the next thing I did, which was a huge step for me, okay, so I'm an engineer, so talking to anybody is a big step. So my huge step was to go into Starbucks and start a conversation with somebody.
Ooh.
Yeah, one person. And I
Ooh.
did it. And it was so scary. And I probably stumbled all over my words, which I do anyway. And I walked outside after I did it. And it was almost like I won the lottery. Like I wanted to jump up and down because I did it. And then the next time I talked to two people, and it was just a slow evolution of building my own internal confidence and getting out of my own way. And that's what I try to fast forward for people now is all about the mindset piece. But I think it was really a combination of all these different things of not only learning, networking, and doing these small little things to trick my mind, to build the confidence to just get into motion. Because that's actually the hardest piece, is to get into motion. Because once you try something, you're like, it's not that big of a deal. It's real, like you're going to survive. Like the worst case scenario is that you lose a couple $100 or whatever it is. The worst case scenario is not life or death. The worst case scenario is a small price that you're going to have to pay to move on to where you want to go eventually. But it's the hardest piece for people to do.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is that there was a song a while ago that my mind is playing tricks on me. I mean, at the end of the day, we think the perception is, oh my gosh, if that happens, it's over. Whatever it is, it's just done. It's over. My world is ending. And yet you found simple ways to bridge that gap so that that didn't happen. And I'm sure many people would have loved to seen you go through the process at Starbucks. And who did you choose to pick? And what did you choose to say? And I'm sure all of those questions are going through. But at the end of the day, what I want everybody to hear is, you and I, as you guys know, I'm naturally an introvert. Sounds like Austin has some of those same tendencies. That doesn't mean we can't make this work. In fact, that could be the very reason why you must make this work. So let me ask some of the questions that I'm sure that is on somebody's mind. Tell us a little bit about what is in your book. Why did you choose to write it, and who is it really for?
There's a lot in the book. There's a lot in there. And I just got a quote from somebody. I had somebody test read it and give me some feedback. And he texted me 2 sentences. And it was something like, I've read a lot of books and I highlighted nearly this entire book. And the reason that there's a ton of great information in there, and my only job is to make sure that it flows well and that it's formatted well, right? Because what I did was interview 75 successful entrepreneurs, and what I learned after about the 10th interview was that everybody's journey is really the same. Everybody goes through some of the same sequential steps, one after the next. They build this snowball, and that just goes and goes and goes. And there were just a number of different things that I wanted to pull out that were not taught in school. We're not taught in average society. It took me until the age of 24 to really learn about entrepreneurship or learn about some of these different things that the wealthy do. It took me until the age of 24, 25 to learn what wealth really is. And wealth is more than money. It's more of a result of money. It's more of a mindset and a belief and a confidence and moving forward in a direction. So it's for people that are potentially working hard, but they're not getting the results that they want. And what I want to do is get people headed down their path towards wealth. And once people get headed down that path, then you get a taste of what it's like, and you're just not going to get off of it. So trying to give people the direction that they need to get into motion, get that motivation to hear stories like yours, where you started and where you're at now, where I was just 6 years ago. And all these different people. We had one guest who was actually considered dead for 6 minutes. He was told that he was never going to walk again. So not only did he walk, he ran an ultra marathon. Now he has a couple successful business. He's a best-selling author. All these different things. It doesn't matter where you're at, you can get to where you want to go. And I hope this book is a guide to help get people in motion towards where they really want to go.
Now, just as a side note, so that you know, Austin, when you say things like, it took me all the way to the age of 24 to figure out what wealth is, just realize that some people are older than 24. Okay.
No. And I say that, I'm glad you bring that up. And I say that for a reason. That's why I wrote this book, was so that people don't have to wait till they're 80 or 40 or 20, or even 24. So that people, no matter what age they are, if they read this book, they can learn these things about what true wealth is. And actually in the introduction is a whole section on what the wealthy define as wealth. And it's funny, the definition in the dictionary is an abundance of money and possessions. But the only time money ever came up when it was about cash flow or financial freedom. Other than that, it was not even talked about. It was more about purpose and passion and contribution and all these other things, especially freedom. And that's what we're all really going for. So that's another reason why the book was written, so that people that read it, no matter what their age is, can figure out these things right now and not tomorrow.
Are you tired of letting good cash flow generating ideas go to waste? Go to cashflowdiary.com/ready to apply for a complimentary, yes, that means free, one-on-one breakthrough session. Take action now. Go to cashflowdiary.com/ready. Again, that's cashflowdiary.com/ready. Before we get back to today's episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast, your host Jay Massey has some important insights to share with you.
Here's a question. What have you found that you have in common with many of the individuals that we've interviewed, that we've talked to? And most importantly, what have you been able to implement that they have also done? I mean, if they're human, just like you or I, what's the difference? Can we not do the same thing? And that's kind of my question to you. As you're listening to Austin, you've got to hear yourself in various different forms. I mean, you don't have to lose it all in order to make things happen. And as you hear in his story, it doesn't matter what level someone is at. It is still possible to be frustrated and, most importantly, dissatisfied and seeking more. I hope that as you continue to listen to the rest of this particular interview, you find those specific action steps that you can take that he took and that others have taken to go out there and create their success. Let's get back to it. Well, you know, what's interesting, by that dictionary definition, nearly every American household is wealthy, because if they've got at least 2 televisions or more than one cell phone, or if just go look in your garage, that's where the abundance of possessions are lying that should be on eBay, so that you could go sell it and actually then put that money to use. So right. Talk to us, if you will. What was that? Why paper assets? What makes that the thing for you? How does that work in your world to be able to build cash flow and to set yourself free at the ripe old age of 27?
It was best for me because initially it was an interest for me. So as a teenager, I was always really brought into enjoy different movies about the stock market. So it was the first kind of interest that I had, and it's the first thing I wanted to learn about when I had the ability to do so after college, which of course I could have done at any time, which is what I learned later. It works best for me because what I wanted was something that I could use my analytical skills and set something up that is automated. So what I do now, Jay, is I turn my program on in the morning and I turn it off at night. And I go do whatever I want to in between that. And that allowed me to have the lifestyle that I want to. So I've traveled around for actually 51 weeks, and next week will be exactly 1 year. And it was an opportunity for me to do that. So I learned from some other people that I could automate my investments, I could have them simplified, and that's what I've done. So then it was a matter of, how do I create my strategy? How do I create something that will make money in no matter if the market's going up or going down? And it was just kind of the first channel for me to go after. And it actually worked out well because I have an engineering degree. I love the numbers, so I love the analytics of it. And it was just something that fit my style, I guess.
Got it. So then let's talk about the who can make this happen. I mean, at the end of the day, what if it was me, a few years ago? What is it going to take in order to make this happen? I mean, do I have to have, the right, do I have to have a 6-figure income? Do I have to have, what am I missing, or what resources do I need to have access to in order to make this happen for myself?
Before we even get into that, you need to understand what your goals are. So if your goals are cash flow, then it is going to take some different advanced strategies. Now, you don't necessarily need a lot of money. A lot of the investors that I've talked to have started with either $500 or $2,000 or $5,000. You don't have to have $100,000. Now, if you have more than 10 years, then investing in the stock market can be very, very simple, because the market on average goes up over an extended period of time. There has been 0 times where the market has declined over a 10-year period. But if you're looking for cash flow, then it does take some more advanced strategy. So what you can do are do certain dividend strategies. So dividends are payments that you get on a quarterly basis based on the dividend certain stock sets up. What I do is active trading, and that took me a little while. But what I would suggest for people to do is to first define their goals. Second, define like how investing in the stock market is going to be used for them. So is it for retirement? Then that takes a completely different strategy than if it's for income. And the third piece is to just get started with something simple. And you can get started with a 401k or an IRA, which are both retirement vehicles, which are, again, longer term vehicles, very, very easily. And then you can get exposed to the stresses of the market. When the market's declining, what are you going to do? You should actually stick the course most of the time. You just got to find some simple strategies that have proven themselves over decades. And then if you want to get more advanced, then you can do that. But then that's a different practice.
Got it. Okay. And then I just want to make sure you said that right. You said $500, because I'm sure someone right now is going, what does he mean? How can I get started with $500? I mean, don't I need a whole lot more to make this work? So could you explain that a little bit for us?
Absolutely. You can start with pretty much any value that you want to. And there are some different ways. Now, you're not going to make a lot of money, because the bad thing, I tell nobody to start with under $2,000. And here's why. So if you have a typical brokerage account, you're going to be paying, let's say, $10 per trade on a, so you buy a stock, and let's say you put all of your $2,000 in there. That means you're paying $10 up front and $10 on the back end. That's already 1% of your account. So if you have a quick trade and you make 3%, you think that's actually a good trade in a very short window. You already pay 1% in fees, so you actually only make 2%. So it's really putting yourself behind the 8 ball. So you really want to start with as much money as possible, but you don't necessarily have to. And there's something risky that I started trading right away that I wouldn't suggest to anybody to start out with, but it's options. And these are when you buy a bundle of stocks at one period of time. So basically you buy a bunch for a shorter or for a lower cost. and it's lower risk, or it's higher risk, because you can lose all of your money very easily, but you can also make a lot more, much more quickly. So it's hard to explain without me getting on the chalkboard here, but there are a bunch of different ways, and it's not a chalkboard. I don't know if people have those anymore, but but there are a lot of different ways to get started, I guess what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I get that. And yes, I haven't seen a chalkboard in a long time, but that I'm sure they still exist somewhere in various different forms. Now, I guess the question becomes, is you mentioned overcoming a middle class mindset. Can you help me understand how that helped in any way, shape, or form? Because I mean, I'm listening to you today. It doesn't sound like I need to have anything. I don't need to think a particular way to open up an account at, a discount broker or anything. So why is that important in any way, shape, or form?
I think it is important. So you do need that. So you need to start thinking bigger. So you need to start having more confidence and thinking like the rich do, and start thinking in a big way. So when I started making my goals bigger, I wasn't worried about making $100 in the stock market. I was worried about making a 7-figure business, and something that was automated, that didn't need me to do anything. So now I can have my assistant run my business. And just that big shift in my mindset created the difference between $100 and $1 million, right? So it is about changing your mindset, really. And what I also did was, again, we go back to this confidence word, build my confidence so that I could put myself out there to ask very successful people what they did, ask them to mentor me, ask them how they failed, ask them what they do in my situation. So it's really about thinking in a certain way, and then acting in a way that coincides with that. So once you start to think big, you start to act and do things based on those big beliefs, and it really snowballs everything. So you just cut back your time. So I heard somebody say the other day, what size of the problem are you trying to solve? And that size of the problem dictates the size of your success. So if you're focused on something small, then your results are going to be something small. If you're focused on something big, then your results are going to be big. So it's kind of like shoot for the moon and catch the stars, or maybe the opposite. I don't know. But it's all about the mindset at the end of the day for me.
I heard something similar from a person as well. So that's interesting to me that you were saying a 7-figure business. Now, because very few people, well, first of all, we all know I play in the real asset world, so I don't spend a whole lot of time in the paper asset world. You might be one of the first individuals that I'm sitting here going, okay, so he wants to do it on an automated fashion. That's interesting. That's interesting enough to me to get my attention, to make me want to go, hey, maybe there's more to this whole paper asset thing. Because typically in my head, I think of the person who's up at, the bell opening and stuck at their computer to bell close. And I'm just like, I do not want to do that. So
that was me. That was what I used to do. It's hilarious. I used to listen to like this music that would get me pumped up, and I would call my buddy who was also trading, and we would watch CNBC, and we'd drink Monster energy drinks. And now if you saw my trading, you would literally fall asleep within 3 minutes. And you know what the difference is? The difference is now I'm successful, and I used to be. And that's the myth about successful investing. Like, successful investing should be as exciting as watching paint dry. It's all about numbers. It's like
that right.
You have to have an edge to have ultra success from the investing world in any type of investing, right? Mine's just on a much more quick basis, I guess, if you want to picture it that way. But anything's possible. And the reason I love the stock market so much is because you can quickly add up compound interest. So compound interest is the most powerful force in the universe. Albert Einstein didn't say that, but they say he did. So anyhow, it's a great quote. And I learned, being a math nerd, I learned that if I took $10,000 and learned how to make 1% per day, I would make $1 million in like 1.7 years. I forget what the exact number is, but it's a very quick period of time from $10,000. And that kind of motivated me to, how do I not necessarily make 1% per day, but how do I make 0.2% per day, which doesn't sound like much, but you put $100,000 at 0.2% per day, and we're talking about some big numbers, and it just grows and grows and grows. Not linearly, it grows exponentially.
Well, that'll definitely buy a few Monster energy drinks. Got it. So other than your tips on nutrition, what else do you think has been very, very helpful in terms of being able to create the success that you've seen out there?
A mastermind group.
Oh, is there? Okay. So you're saying you don't have all the answers?
I'm saying find somebody that has a lot more answers than you.
Got it.
Find other people that are like-minded and going to the same place that you want to go to. Surround yourself with them. That's the most impactful thing that you can do. You can read 200 books like I did. You can join a bunch of different groups, but until you join one that's really your people, that's really motivated and has the same mindset, that has a leader that has been there, that is going to even higher levels. Once you find that person, that's what you need to do. That's the quickest way to success, because you get that coach, you get that accountability, you get that resources, you get that support. All these different things are just absolutely priceless. That's the number one thing that people can do.
Now, you mentioned you could read 200 books and you've mentioned going to all of these meetings and finding these people. You know, Austin, this dangerously sounds a lot like work.
I had a full-time job while I was doing all this.
Oh, now you're going to make us feel great. Awesome.
And I was working at least 50 hours for my full-time job. I was working at least 50 hours for my investing business or in education for 2 years. And what I did was almost kill myself. So I would not do that. Now I'm such a big advocate of taking the shortcut. All right. And the shortcut is exactly what we've talked about this entire interview. And I've always been a very healthy person. I played college football, always been fit, I was working out. When I was doing this, I had to call 911, not once, but twice. I thought I was going to die. I was having anxiety attacks because I was literally sleeping between 2 and 5 hours a day, and my mind was just racing so much, and I was just going full speed, and I was probably drinking Monster energy drinks and doing all these different things. But there's a much smarter path to take, and that's what I try to and that's what you help people do. That's what you help me do now. So it's really, really powerful.
Interesting. So you're saying 2 to 5 hours of sleep doesn't work? Oh, got it. Now that's pretty funny to me, though, that you at least realized that and you did something about it. So tell me about that time where you totally made a mistake. Something didn't go well. You thought, oh my God, how on earth am I ever going to get out of this situation?
You know, I've had this question a few times, and unfortunately, I don't have a great answer. That's actually a very negative thing. I was on my buddy Edwin Marino's podcast once, and I think it's the Failing Greatly podcast or whatever. And we were talking, I was like, I don't have any great epic failures. And that's why I'm not a multi-millionaire yet. Like, next time I come on your show, Jay, I want to have an epic failure that I've had.
You can borrow some of mine, that's for sure.
Well, that will mean that I'm successful. So to be honest with you, the biggest mistake I could say that I've made is, even after I started my algorithmic business, it took me 2 years to leave my company. 2 years. I was starting to make more money on the side by pressing an on button and an off button than I was by going to work for somebody else.
Interesting thought.
That is a mistake. Time is money. And I enjoyed what I did. I liked the people. Everything was good. But good is not great, and that was a mistake that I made.
Ooh, okay, but so why did you make it? Here, that's an interesting thought process. If you've got the income coming in, why hold on to the job?
I was still overcoming that middle class mindset. I was still overcoming fear every single day. It was a gradual process that took me 2 years. When I said I was at zero, I was at zero. I had confidence, and I had the belief internally that I was going to be successful someday, but I didn't have that real true belief. And there's a difference between the confidence and what I knew that someday would be true. And
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was a year and a half, and then I knew, and I still wasn't healthy. So the health thing in between there kind of backed things up a little bit, but still it was mostly about confidence.
So, what gave you the, we'll say, confidence to actually cut the umbilical cord, if you will, and go out there and go, you know what? I don't need this job.
I hit a couple milestones. I was always like, all right, as soon as I make six figures, that's good enough. I'll leave the company. As soon as I do this, as soon as I have this much money saved up, I'll leave. And finally, I hit the last one. I was like, you know what? Like it's time. And I had some other external offers that were much more money than I was already making. So I was like, do I go make all this money, double the money almost, working for somebody else while I'm still building up this fund, and then I'll be able to really retire and sell my business and do whatever I want for the rest of my life? Or do I go and do the things that I'm passionate about now? Do I go and travel? Do I go and teach people about the things that I've been fortunate enough to learn? Do I still go scale my business? What do I do? And I just kind of ran out of excuses. So there wasn't any major trigger, but what I did was I started to make monthly goals. Okay. And once I started to accomplish all those, I finally said, all right, next month, I'm going to ask for a raise. If they don't blow me out of the water, then it's time to go. And I knew they weren't going to give me any number that I would stay, but I wanted to go through that process. And that was kind of my last straw of, all right, you've done everything that you said, quit making excuses. My people around me, my mastermind group, were supporting me, and they were all doing these crazy things, having success and traveling the world and doubling their business. And I wasn't doing those things. And that's again, the biggest reason why you need to surround yourself with those people, because they'll pull you to wherever they're going, whether that's down or whether that's up. So they better make sure that they're up.
You got that right. I've said it before. I say it again. Environment trumps will any day. Now, what I find interesting, though, is I've often told people that I strongly believe it takes more faith to leave a comfortable position than it does to work from having your back against the wall. And as many of you know, our back was against the wall, but you had to go, okay, I got it, quote unquote, pretty good right here. Do I really, really, really believe in this other thing that I've got going on? Yeah, I see the numbers, but the day I quit, what's going to happen that next day? Like, did you wake up the next day and go, oh my God, it's still there?
No. I was, by the time I made the decision and started telling people about it, then it was just this calming feeling. Like I was the least stressed person in the world. And I still am very no stress. Like look at me 3 years ago and look at me today, like insane. And that's what I wanted to find, was that freedom, that peace of mind. And it was just, I wasn't ever really afraid that it wasn't going to work out. I was just afraid of something new and not having that paycheck, or just not having a job. Like people ask me what I do. I don't know. I travel around the world and I make money. I have no idea.
That becomes a difficult answer. You're right. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's much easier with the corporate world. But anyhow, it's and you mentioned the word uncertainty. And one of my favorite Tim Ferriss quotes is he says, most people would choose unhappiness over uncertainty. And it's so true. And that uncertainty makes people unhappy. And so it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that you need to overcome. You need to build that certainty, whether it starts with your mind or starts with the results. It usually starts with your mind first, but it's just an evolution that we have to get over, and it starts with just getting in motion.
Got it. So tell us a little bit, for those who have been listening, they're like, I want to know more about what you've got going on, and who else have you run into that, has deposited, I'll say, excellent lessons inside your book. Otherwise, let us know how we can find more of you, how we can find your book, and most importantly, what's next for Austin?
Oh man, I'll start with what's next because I don't know what I'm going to say here. what I'm trying to do is build a platform that I can do all the different things that I'm interested in. So I have what a lot of people have is a form of entrepreneurial ADD. And I want to move on from project to project. And what I want to build is something that I can do all these different things, all about the mindset, all about money, because it's my belief that if you take care of those two things, then everything else in life starts to fall in place. So everything that I do around coaching, events, books, all these different things are about money and the mindset. So I'm really trying to build this mega platform that really masters those two things. So where you can find the book, Amazon. Go to makemoneylivewealthy.com. Go to yoprowealth.com. You'll see the book there. It's pretty much, I have several different sites. I have austinnetzley.com, but I'm going to give you one to go to. It's makemoneylivewealthy.com. I've got some great resources that go along with the book that I think people are really going to enjoy. Some great free videos and a bunch of different things. And if you like what you hear, then either join Jay's masterminds, all his training, join my mastermind, my training. We've got a lot of amazing things. And it's that group, it's that power of a group that will change your life. So that's it.
That's very, very true. And as you guys have now learned, we've got show notes. And guess what? Those links will be there for you. So head over to the website at cashflowdiary.com. Look for Austin. Listen to what he's got to share because it is so great. So Austin, answer me this just before, pretend that there's someone, who's in the situation that you were in. You've had some experience now. You've gotten to see the world in a whole bunch of different countries. Now that you've experienced that, knowing what you know today, before you put on that cape again, what would you talk to the person who's hoping to be able to put on their superhero cape, become that entrepreneur? Most importantly, what would you tell the Austin of yesteryear today?
I would tell the Austin of yesteryear that the real measure of intelligence is action. You don't have to be very smart. You don't have to have a lot of education. You don't have to read hundreds of books. What you have to do is to get into motion. Action is the real measure of intelligence. That will be the ultimate measure of your success.
Nice. I appreciate that one for sure. So, sir, thank you for being here and investing time with us.
Thank you so much, Jay. It's been awesome.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what it's time to do. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. There have been a number of books and resources given to you so that you can go out there and take action in. Yeah, you know what? It may start with those 3 simple books. Go pick up The Stone Fox, The Book Thief, and The Art of Racing in the Rain. I can promise you, I wasn't expecting those to come out of his mouth, but they did. Maybe there's something in those books for you too. It's been fun talking to all of you guys again, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.